that, I would like to ask Jutta Nasser and the panel to come up for the discussion on AI, and also Raphael Auer, who will give us a quick introduction. I don't know whether you want to do that here at the lectern, about the work that the BIS, the Bank for International Settlement, is doing to coordinate the work of supervisors. Thank you. Yes, I think so. I'll just put it. Please already sit down.
Hello, everyone. So, thanks for the introduction. It's a great pleasure to be talking here. I want to start, maybe give you a bit of a background of the BIS Innovation Hub and sort of the work that we do. I think the BIS Innovation Hub is a department of the BIS, but it's organized very differently. It has its own IT setup. It is a collaboration with central banks around the world. So there are several centers. In my case, I head up the Eurosystem Center. We work with all the central banks of the Eurosystem. We have an office in Frankfurt with Bundesbank and an office in Paris with Banque de France. But we work with everyone, and we run innovation projects. And the goal is always to vet technologies, which are useful technologies, what are their risks, where are applications of for central banks, and how could central banks really use them. We also develop technologies. I'm going to be talking about 2 projects in a second. And in total, we just want to be a catalyst that makes central bank work with technology in a productive manner. So to understand what are the use cases, what are the risks, how can we improve our own operations, and what are the implications if the private sector uses it. We have a wide remit in the Eurosystem Center. For example, today we talked a lot already about quantum, the quantum threat. So we have Project Leap, where we actually work with post-quantum cryptography to prepare payment systems for the quantum threat. We work on tokenization. We have a number of projects. For our largest one is Project Agora, where we have 7 currencies, from the US dollar to the Japanese yen, and including the euro, and 40 private banks that work with us, and to see how we could facilitate cross-border payments with tokenized deposits. And certainly, we have AI. And I'm very happy to be speaking about 2 projects here, just after Petra spoke about sort of how it's important, right, that you get some hands-on understanding, and just before a panel on the regulation of this. Because I think sort of it's really important to get hands-on experience, to understand in the detail what the potential is, how reliable is a certain application, and what the risks are. And the only way to do that is to really develop it in-house. And that's what we do in the Innovation Hub together with central banks from the Euro area. And I want to give you 2 examples. The first one is Project Gaia. Project Gaia is a project that brings structure to the chaos of ESG data. So today, there is a lot of ESG data out there, but it can be very hard to find because there is a lack of standardization. So many of the firms in this audience and banks around the world voluntarily publish a lot of information, but the formatting is very heterogeneous. One report will put a certain KPI in a table, another report will put it in line in the text, and a third will put it in a graph. And assembling that to get a systematic view is a huge manual effort. And with Project Gaia, what we did is we took this manual process, we automated it using generative AI, and we shortened what is maybe a manual work of well in excess of a month to less than an hour. At a very high level, this seems very easy to do. You collect the PDFs, put them in a repository, you feed it through an LLM engine, and you put the data that you get into a repository, right? And there you have it. But of course, the problem is reliability. and hallucinations. And I think that's the danger. I really like the rule that we just heard. If you're in a rush, don't use Gen AI or any chatbot, because that's exactly the problem, right? We all know these great answers. They sound great, but they're simply not true. And when we, on first go, in an early version of the tech platform, actually, we found for all banks in the sample, CO2 emissions, for example, inexplicably, every single bank had emitted exactly 35,000 tons. The platform is constructed also to give you a reference for every data point that you get, and it was always ESG underscore report.pdf. So the hallucination was not only the number, but also the source. And these kind of hallucinations need to be overcome with solid engineering, prompt engineering. You need to ask the same questions in various different ways. You need to ask retrospective questions. And last, you still need to add sort of always the possibility for a human to quickly check. So you get the number, but you also get the quick link. I found this information here in a document. And that's just one of the many sort of really solid engineering things you need to do. And after it was all said and done, we could get a simple test set of 200 banks, 20 KPIs in 5 years, and collect these 20,000 data points within 1 hour. And so here, right, the insight is really how you understand that the models are already there. They already have good performance. The models evolve. They evolve rapidly. We see that, right? And the answers on these tasks tend to get better, not with every models, right? There's quite some heterogeneity about how different models from different vendors perform, but there is a trend to the better. But it only works if you have it in an application that sort of really has a solid chain of a chain of prompts that are engineered well, and you can really test it. You have a proper validation data set. I also want to quickly speak about a second project that we're doing right now. It's called Project Spectrum. It's with the Deutsche Bundesbank and the ECB, and it uses generative AI to sort of take big data on prices to produce inflation nowcasts. We've seen in the last year, right, inflation has moved around rapidly, and it was at times difficult to say where is inflation headed next and how persistent is it. And this is a paradox because we have an enormous wealth of information. We have web scraping, we have special data sets where specific marketing companies scan the prices for many consumers and make that data available. And the problem is for central banks is to go from billions of prices to forecasting one aggregate time series. And in that, sort of the lack of structure of this data, again, is a problem. Because if you think about a typical web store, for example, there will be one TV model, and it will be on sale for 3 months, and then it will be discontinued, and you get the next model. And so what we do in Project Spectrum is we use the product descriptions to chain products and to map sort of billions of individual prices into hundreds of sectoral price indices that are then usable for a standard inflation forecasting process. And again, sort of, it's about the reliability of the implementation. And here what we also see is that compute costs can be very, very high. In particular, when you go to these new models, you can really burn a lot of money because you need to sort of classify billions of products. And if you did it the wrong way, it could actually cost billions of euros. But obviously, we have some limits. And then you learn about new methodologies. Here, one of the key solutions is to use embeddings. Those are basically intermediate steps in these LLMs that compress a 100-page text document into a vector of 100 dimensions that sort of contains a lot of the relevant information. And for us, we do it to work with compute. But I think the broader learning here is that you can work with quite detailed, quite sensitive information, but you can abstract from a lot of it. And in the end, you can work with sort of compressed information that, you know, may be useful for many applications such as credit scoring. We do it for inflation forecasting without being sensitive in and of itself. It's not a silver bullet. There are always issues. But I think sort of these are, I want to leave you with some of these insights and what they, for example, mean for regulation. So what we see is, and we all witness this, these models get better and better every day. And we've had this discussion already before. How do we think about when somebody uses, has an application that feeds in a base model from somewhere else, right? And I think sort of the way the industry will evolve is that we will all set up data pipelines, we will set up prompt engines, and then switch out the LLMs to first optimize which one is the best, bang for the buck, and then to adjust for the evolution. And sort of regulation and supervision needs to sort of deal with this modular approach where we have elements that are being switched in and out, and if we have a framework where if you switch out one element, everything needs to undergo a full process, that will throw in a lot of frictions. And second, as I said, I think AI also opens up new ways to work with data. You can sort of differentiate, you can use some of the private information without disclosing the private information itself, and there could be innovative regimes that sort of allow industry to do that. And I want to leave you with these thoughts. Thank you again for inviting me, and I'm looking very much forward to the panel.